Hi, everyone. So, Jillian, so your picture ends up as the front picture. Do something exciting right now. The
Woo!
video.
USA!
Can we,
Woo!
can we talk about something real?
There we go. Hopefully that'll be the.
No. It'll be this. It'll be like me going like this. 'Cause that's the
I can just chant USA for like the next minute, and
Well,
hopefully people don't get annoyed.
Since the Olympics will last another week and a half, we got to talk about this because
I got to mention one thing real fast, and then we'll get into this. But our show yesterday was limited in views, as you might have noticed, but less than usual. And I found out I got a letter this morning that we were actually taken down in some countries yesterday because of something that happened on the show. And I was trying to find out what the heck that would be, and they're very it had to be a video we shared. I figured that's like it had to be because that's usually if we shared a copy. Like I put the Connor McDavid. Maybe it was the Connor McDavid.
no, it's got to be the KHL fight.
Maybe it's the KHL fight. But somebody and I don't know. I think Canada may have knocked us off yesterday somehow in Google World. And that
I had the same problem, and then I had a problem with my router after, and it took a while.
No. I'm talking about our actually on YouTube, a message from YouTube that we violated some copyright patent yesterday, or not copyright, but something like I broadcast a couple videos from YouTube or what have you. The KHL thing was from like the CBS or NBC site, right? It was like completely
CBS.
Yeah, CBS.
Yeah. I don't know. The other one was from YouTube. I mean, I promoted their thing, if anything else, so I don't know. It was kind of confusing, but that's fine. So we'll try not to show any videos today.
Don't show any of the Olympics.
Or ever. Well, screw the Olympics.
Rule 40. I just learned about Rule 40, and it's pretty intense.
Rule 40?
It has to do with the people who aren't official sponsors. So it was originally put in place because of the 1996 Olympics when the guy wore the bright, like yellow Nike sneaker or running shoes.
Right.
And Reebok was the sponsor.
Right.
So that's how it started, but it's kind of convoluted so that now people who aren't official sponsors, like people who didn't pay millions and millions of dollars to be an official Olympic sponsor, they can't. So the time of the year when their athletes are the most valuable, so like little smaller brands who have invested in athletes, they're not allowed to talk about them during the Olympics.
Right.
I don't know
at all. Like they can't say like hashtag.
Well, the athletes can't talk about
the most absurd thing. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's
the athletes can't even talk about it.
No, so there's a Twitter handle I think it's like @Rule40 where like they do like the most vague tweets ever, where it's like congratulations to 4 women who competed in an event whose name we can't say, and it's like making fun of the fact of how ridiculous it is. And
this is Stephen Colbert had the great thing with this, and lastly, because he's not allowed to hashtag Team USA either, and so he said, I won't hashtag.
Not allowed to, but fans can.
Yeah, he's not allowed to. He said, but but fans are actually they can hashtag it.
Yes.
Right, but if you're a commercial entity, like I probably couldn't because Hockey Buzz is a commercial entity, so I've got it. So, but he said, what we wanted to do instead of hashtagging Team USA, if you're liking the Olympics, the best thing to drink during the Olympics is this new tea that we're sponsoring called Musa tea, and he's like just hashtag tea Musa, and you'll get the. It was just like. Perfect.
I knew there was a reason why I thought Stephen Colbert was hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. I know that and I can't remember if it was Real Sports with Brian Gumbel or another news show, but there was an athlete who was participating in the games in Rio that are not, I shall not name because I don't.
It was Brian Gumbel's show.
Yeah, that there was an athlete who had tattooed the sponsor on their.
Oh my gosh.
And they make him put a bandage over it so it can't be seen.
Right. Well, I had a little bit of a run-in in the Vancouver Olympics. I was podcasting from the press box, during just doing audio podcasting, just quick with Mike, I think at the time, just quick, and I got tapped on the shoulder. It was between games because the way the Olympics work, there's like 3 games in a row, and you get like an hour and a half between games or so. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just going to do a quick podcast about the game that just happened. So Mike and I are doing this thing, and I get literally tapped on the shoulder, and I turn around, and it's like a Men in Black guy, like literally, like I'm like, yes. He's like, you need to come with us. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, Mike, we got to end this podcast now. I'll talk to you later. Bam, we ended it. I got taken to a dark room literally, and told how I was not allowed to broadcast anything from the games. Like and I said, the games aren't going on. I said, I'm just broadcasting from the press box in between games, talking about the games. Like, no, you're within this area. You cannot broadcast. So the only way I could broadcast was to leave the security and walk 5 miles away from the security.
Well,
There's a 5-mile radius outside the security I couldn't broadcast from either.
well,
So
this is how ridiculous this is, and it's far-reaching when it comes to the specter that the IOC puts on broadcast limitations. The TSN radio stations in Canada are carrying some of the Canadian Olympic events. They're on the radio.
right.
They have blacked out all the TSN radio stations in Canada from any kind of listening online,
Right, they have.
tune-in radio, anything like that, because they don't want people doing an end around outside of NBC. I mean,
think about this for a second. Okay, I could either watch it on this incredible free NBC app. I could watch the actual event live, happening right in front of my face, like in the best way possible. And I'm sure CBC has the same kind of app.
Not everything's live like you think it is, though.
Well, it is.
On the apps, they are. Like on the app.
The app it is, right? So I can watch anything live at any point. Or I could go to TuneIn Radio and listen to it on TSN from Canada. I could listen to that. I mean, I could watch any Canadian event I want to already, watch it fully on my phone for free.
And the thing is, Zach, is that they're not just blacking out. That this would be too much work. They're not just blacking out the individual broadcasts of the things of anything from the Olympics. They're just blanketly blacking out TSN for 2 weeks.
Friggin' lazy.
So so you can't listen to anything on there. And there are shows on that particular station that I do like. So
yeah, I listen to shows on there too.
Let's just, before we start the show, I wanted to bring this up because I'm wearing my Bronx Bombers T-shirt. Thank you very much. And Alex Rodriguez potentially will play his final game in the major leagues unless some idiot team picks him up, because he's hitting .202 right now, and he's 41 or 42 years old, and he's at the end of his career. But Russ.
Can I pick him up and have him help me clean out my backyard? Like, I really need help.
There you go. I'm sure you can hire somebody.
Need help.
He said 690. What? I don't know what that reaction.
Jillian's obviously, that was not to my comment. I'm hoping that was more to something that you actually saw, because Jillian's watching the Olympics.
But Jillian, don't say anything because we could be violating Olympic rules.
Right. She's watching. She's watching an event being held in Rio with two women's teams competing against each other with a leather ball, and in somewhere in South America.
Okay, Russ, I don't know if a player as prominent in his sport, as well regarded as A-Rod in terms of his statistics and his place in the game, has left a sport in more disgrace than him. The only one I can think of is O.J. Simpson, and that was after his career was over with, 15 years after his career. Can you think of any?
All right, how far back do you want to go?
I mean, you can go back to Ty Cobb, and he was
the Black Sox, right? That was the worst.
Yeah, but they weren't in the Hall. I mean, he's a potential Hall of Famer.
Well, but so was Shoeless Jackson.
That's true.
But I get your point, and it is a fair point, and it is disgraceful. And I think what was even more disgraceful was before the series with the Red Sox began, A-Rod felt it necessary to talk to the media and basically say, well, I thought I was playing all 4 games, but apparently I'm not. And they said, well, why aren't you? And he's like, gee, I don't know why. And it's like, listen, just because your manager said a week before that he hoped to play you in those 4 games doesn't mean that things didn't change, which they did. They're over 500. They are still contending, and they're not a contender with him in the lineup. No. He always causes trouble. He has now split the fan base. Half the fans are against the Yankees management, and now half the fans are with him. He has done this his entire career with the woe is me. I'll be happy to see him gone.
Yeah, as most Yankee fans, I mean, he achieved a lot in his career. He won a World Series with the Yankees, but most Yankee fans that I know, if it's between him and Jeter is, God Almighty, and A-Rod is the devil. So and I don't think anybody. I mean, he'll the Yankee fans are classy. He'll get an ovation tonight, but it's not going to be like Jeter's final game, and everybody just sort of wants to move on. And but it's surprising. A guy who is fourth in career in home runs, has hit over 3,000 hits because of the steroids, probably is not getting in the Hall of Fame, and it's almost like people are pushing him out the door. And
well, the NHL would do the same thing, though. I mean, the Hockey Hall of Fame would do the same thing. If there was that kind of scandal in hockey, those guys wouldn't get in either. I mean, they barely put in goalies now who are totally clean and are Hall of Fame worthy. So it would happen in this sport too.
But it seems to be exclusive to baseball. Rose, Cobb, and the other steroid guys.
The fact is that you got more steroid people in baseball that have retired. Like I think that
Bonds.
I don't really think it. I think it's just I think that's it more than anything else. Don't you? I mean.
Yeah, I think that is it. I
mean, you have these big superstars that played in an era where hockey players. We don't know if. Like if I don't know Bobby Hull or somebody like that was taking. We don't know what they were doing back then.
Right.
But I don't think I'm not saying they are. Of course, it's not an accusation at all. But I'm just saying that we don't really.
But there's never even been a gambling scandal in the NHL. There was in baseball with.
Oh no, that's not true. Now come on, there was a gambling scandal. Do we forget? I mean.
Which one?
No, do we forget Rick Tocchet?
And, Rick Tocchet, but he was already retired.
And Doug Gretzky was involved with that. There was a lot of stuff.
But they were already retired. I mean, while the sport was still
going on, right?
I mean, basketball had the Tim Donaghy.
Well, actually, wasn't that said that there was stuff going on during Tocchet was doing stuff with players who were still playing at that time, if I remember, Operation Slapshot correctly? Yes. There was a lot of stuff. I remember that whole thing.
But Tim Donaghy in the NBA, the referee, but that's not involving players. But Paul Hornung in the 60s, Alex Karras in the 60s were involved in gambling in the NFL. So, yeah, but no, I mean, the sort of after-the-fact scandal has to do mostly in baseball, whether it's gambling.
Well, I'll tell you why. There's not enough gamblers that are interested in hockey. That's really what it is. Now, in Canada, that might not be the case, but in the States,
that's interesting.
That is the case.
That's a good point. I think that's a good point. Should some, let's get on to the show, but first I have a question for Jillian. Should someone in soccer come in on a breakaway, which rarely happens, of course, but, if that ever does happen, it is good for the goalie to challenge a little bit more than I feel that some goalies do challenge. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes. I played goalie. That was my position.
You were goalie? I didn't know that.
I was goalie, yeah. I was goalie on the Olympic development team. So,
holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
My daughter, is a goalie. That's awesome.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what she does. Yeah, for sure.
I feel her pain. It's a tough position. It is.
This is what the goaltender should do. Look up the World Cup. I think it was in 1982. Germany versus France. The goaltender was named Schumacher, and there was a French player on a break, and the goalie came out and did a double knee right to the player's head.
Yeah. I mean, you might not want to do that.
I mean, that's obviously
you commit to it. You don't ever you don't start coming off your line or challenging and then take a step back. You go all the way, which is the hardest thing to learn, is to fight your instinct on that, because you may start coming out and then you want to stop, but you just come out. You got to, make the decision, and when you make it, stick with it. So if you're not going to come out and challenge, then stay back, but if you're going to come out and challenge, which I think is people are never going to question you if you come out and challenge and they score, but if you stay back and they score, they're like, why didn't you come out and challenge?
It stopped the goal.
Well, the thing about goalie and is the angle, the concept of angles in hockey. Like, I grew up as a hockey goalie and taught my daughter how to play soccer goalie. And Jillian, when you come to town, I should hire you to help train her. No, she comes to the idea of an angle with hockey is you come out, you can easily cover the angles. Mm-hmm. You can just cover the whole net. Well, with soccer, you obviously can't do that. You can cover the net, but there's the little aspect of the fact that if you come out far enough to actually cover the angles of the net, you are leaving yourself wide open to a shot being blooped over your head. And there's no getting around that. There's no in between. So you're stuck there, and that's the problem with goalie in soccer, where you can't really the forward does have you, basically, because if they pin the corners or if they bloop it over your head, one way or the other, there's an opening. Like in hockey, you can say the goalie has everything covered. You can't say that in soccer.
Yeah, but I think when a goalie comes out and challenges confidently, the pressure's all. It's the same thing with PK. The pressure's all on the forward. If they mess up, they're the idiot. They're the one. So if you can come out confidently and maybe shake them up a little, or even mess up their angle a little bit, which now like they were thinking of going to the corner, but now they have to pop it over your head.
Right.
It's a decision they make, and yeah, the greatest are probably going to make it usually, but if 9 times out of 10, if you can challenge them and get in their head a little bit and switch up the angle just enough, they can miss, because
they can definitely miss.
You can miss by inches in soccer. So.
And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create a miss. So
I would look for a very fast 7-foot goalie. That's what I would look for.
Well, they are tall. You know, tall helps for sure. You know, my daughter's almost as tall as me now, which is kind of crazy.
So Manute Bol.
Yeah, Manute Bol with a little more lateral movement, though.
No, but the problem is you got to be quick. You know, like your
Right.
your legs have to be really fast.
Right.
My daughter has excelled in indoor soccer because she did learn how to play hockey goalie essentially. So, you know, so her kick saves in indoor soccer are like legendary. Like she has a great kick save. You know, but when she gets outside, of course, the nets are smaller and everything. The nets are bigger, so she can't do all that stuff. So anyway, let's move on to the show.
From basketball, like someone who's 6'5", 6'6", who's really fast. Turn that into a goalie.
Yeah, as long as you can still get down to the ground. Here we go,
Right.
ready? Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, August 12th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Jillian Fisher. Oh, whoops, sorry. I was going to let you go last, Russ.
I jumped the gun. I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings, and is brought to you by people like you. Find subscribers at patreon.com/hockey. That's patreon.com/HOCKEY. And you can, if you can't spell hockey, you've got problems if you're on the show.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, but anyway, patreon.com/hockey, and come to us there and help us out. We really appreciate it. We're going to do a show right after this one that's going to be just for the Patreon people, where we're going to tell all the inside scoops that we can't tell here now. We're going to talk a little bit off the record, fun stuff. It's and we take questions in that podcast. It's really fun. We get a lot. It's very, very, very free form. But I do want to get into what happened yesterday at the end of the show, because we didn't actually get a chance to really to talk about this, because Russ immediately, for some reason, was just banned from the podcast upon hearing this news, just fainted and disappeared. But Patrick Waugh resigning yesterday. You know, and I've done a lot of talk about this, a lot of research on this, and I've talked to a lot of people. But first, I want to get your thoughts, Russ, because you weren't here yesterday. And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so my initial thought was it was probably something to do with roster construction and maybe even the Tyson Barrie deal. And then I saw, you know, Fry's article, and he's the number one guy. Anything on Patrick Waugh, he's always been there at his locker. He's always been the guy. And so when I saw his article, he said that Waugh really wanted a physical defenseman in free agency, and apparently Sakic said, "Well, we're going to lock up our guys," and then I guess there was nothing left to spend.
True.
And so I think that was the problem. I think that Tyson Barrie contract was the last straw, because I think once Waugh saw that and saw that he wasn't getting even the physical defenseman that he wanted, that he wasn't going to like the way this team was, and probably felt like they were going to have a similar result as last year. I mean, that's that. And look, Patrick was a hothead too. Like, we know that. And so, but he did have the title of also like player VP or player development, something like that. So it is fair that he would want to have that input. And it just seems like the organization said, "Well, we're doing this," and then they ran out of money. And so, you know, that's a tough place to go. And I think I don't blame Waugh. And he did do it at a late date, no doubt. But I guess, you know, he probably looked at it like, hey, he had demands that he wanted met, and they weren't met.
I kind of take a little bit different angle, not totally different. Because I heard a little bit more, and we'll get into what I heard too. And I do agree. I heard about the defenseman. You know, Terry Fry, like you say, is the number one guy for sure.
He's the number one guy.
Adrian Dayer does a good job too. I think he's more connected to Sakic, so I think there's different things there. But you know, and that's always the key, is to find out who's connected to who.
Yes.
And you know, so I think this is exactly right. But I think there's a little bit more, and what I heard. And then I'll get into the actual personality involved here, because I think that's fascinating. I think that this is a fascinating personality study in a lot of ways. From my anthropologist friend over there, you're going to like this one. All right, so the fact is this: we know that Waugh also had a really long-running relationship with Jonathan Drouin, was a big fan of Jonathan Drouin, and I was actually told that this began last year when Drouin was basically released and said, not released, but told, was suspended and said you can't go anymore. And Patrick Waugh then immediately got on the bandwagon for Colorado to make a move for him, and said, we can get him and we can move Tyson Barrie at the same time in this deal, and this can be something that we can then go and use the money to sign the bigger defenseman, but we'll disperse our money differently. Instead of having Tyson Barrie and a big defenseman, we'll have Jonathan Drouin and a big defenseman. We'll have a situation where we can actually, and Patrick Waugh loved Jonathan Drouin, and he pushed really hard last year, I was told, for this to happen, and got no response really in terms of it. Like, basically they did not want to make a move for it, and they didn't even really, from what I was told, they didn't even really talk to Tampa about it. And it really miffed Patrick Waugh. And then when Drouin came back and of course made the impact he made, Waugh kept getting more and more pissed off about it. Says, we had a chance here to actually get this guy, we blew it, and now we got to sign Tyson Barrie, and I think that this shows a little bit of, Waugh is the kind of guy, and I'm going to use this term like in a weird way, maybe because he's a coach, but he's like an artistic guy. He's an artistic coach in a way, and I think that that's a strange thing to say, but think about what he's done in the NHL in a short period of time. He's like redefined the paradigm of pulling the goalie, right? Like, he has completely changed that. We used to, the 90 seconds left or a minute or 2 minutes tops, once in a while a team would pull a goalie beyond that, but it was really rare. Now it's completely acceptable to pull a goalie in the second period or in just for a period of time, and then you'd see that occasionally as well, and I know it did happen, but really Waugh sort of made it completely acceptable, like, which is ironic as a goalie he was, but he made this concept of let's just pull the goalie with 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left if you're down by 2, that kind of stuff, and that kind of takes like an artistic mind to make that call. Like, it's not somebody who's thinking normally. It's not something who's thinking, in the normal paradigm. It's something who's thinking outside the box. And having dealt with artists all my life, like in my world, because I've dealt with a lot of artists, it's not surprising that he would just up and quit. Like, because part of the artistic mind of a person like that is this whimsical, and you got to take the good with the bad with that. You have to sit there and say, okay, he's really talented because he's going to come up with ideas and concepts that no one else would come up with. But at the same time, he's also liable to just quit or threaten to quit all the time, or go and come back, and that's what it's like when you work with drummers and guitar players, and when you work with talented people, come with this kind of baggage. And I think that head coaches, we usually don't see that too often, but we see it in Patrick Waugh's terms. Mike, sorry.
And there may be an aspect of this situation that relates to that, but I think also when he was in Quebec in the Q, he was the GM and coach. He had the run of the show. When he was hired in Colorado, they gave him VP of Hockey Operations. It was supposed to be sort of a cohabitation between him and Sakic. You learn now, and I have no reason to doubt your sources talking about Drouin and them wanting to get him. If that's the case, and then he doesn't really want Tyson Barrie, he wants a more physical defenseman, that indicates to me that VP of Hockey Operations title was completely just nothing. It was window dressing. It's sort of like
started off as something and ended up as nothing.
Or
exactly.
Or it was something, but that doesn't mean because you're VP. It just means doesn't mean you have final say. Like the situation is he's not GM.
It could have been a three-pronged thing where Sakic was one vote, where Rob was another vote, and ownership had the third vote, and he kept getting outvoted 2-1. And if that's the case, I mean, remember the Pat LaFontaine situation in Buffalo. He was hired. He thought he was going to be the general manager, and then he found out he was going to be a figurehead, and he quit.
Right.
And then that's. I mean, I'm not saying
the one thing we don't know, which is the biggest thing for me, is Tyson Barrie asked for 1 year in arbitration.
Right.
Then he signed for 4. So something changed.
Right.
I mean, we thought that contract was being signed because it was a good value, and you could turn around and trade that contract because anybody in free agency would pay Tyson Barrie $5.25. But if it's a case that they want that Roy wanted a defenseman that fit more into his scheme, and he didn't think a 5'10" offensive-minded Tyson Barrie fit, and they've just spent $5.25 million for the next 4 years. That's another thing. I'm sure if it was up to Patrick Waugh, he would have traded Mikko Rantanen in a deal to get Jonathan Drouin, because it probably would have taken that much or even more.
Yeah, he would have.
But you know, I mean, I don't know if that means that Rantanen was a Sakic pick or that he had no input in it, but you know, when
he had very little input based on the Terry Fry article. It seemed like the quote was like, "Hey, he's going to be here helping at some point." So it felt like Waugh probably felt like he had a better plan in his mind of somebody that would be quicker. But that's dangerous. You can't expect to draft guys and instantly put them in the lineup and instantly get something out of them, no matter where you draft in the draft. And even if you draft second, it doesn't always work out that way. So I think that was sort of like what worked in juniors that doesn't work in the NHL for Waugh, and he learned that the hard way.
Also, I don't know how much of this, I saw a couple people talking about how much of this is about the like old school versus new school, where I've read a lot that Waugh isn't as much into the stats, isn't as much into that kind of realm, where it seems like that was also a disconnect between him and the organization. It's something that keeps coming up that we can no longer ignore is going to be an issue going forward for not just coaches, but any type of management.
Right. And no, I think that's a great point, and I think it's a really big factor here. And the other thing to take into account, now again, going off of my theory that, you know, here's a more artistic-minded coach who's thinking outside the box all the time and unable maybe to think inside the box, and sometimes artistic people aren't the best when you give them complete responsibility. Like if you've, I mean, if some artistic people can handle that, but very few that I know can. Like for the most part, you know, the best artistic people I ever worked with had I worked with some really talented musicians who had people kind of handling stuff for them because they knew they couldn't.
Right.
Waugh, as a GM/coach in the NHL is not something I would jump on, and I think that what we saw here is probably more so the idea of, okay, he is not able to do this as a GM/coach, right?
No, but
not just a coach. I mean, just as a coach. But here he is in Quebec as a GM/coach and had success. But that is the cue, and that's not the NHL.
Right. But I think the compromise, and again, we don't know the internal dynamics of what happened in Colorado. But if you're giving somebody VP of hockey operations, you're giving them a say-so into what the construct.
Or you're just giving them mouth service. You know, that's like the thing.
Well, that's the thing. If you're giving them lip service act, then that's a meaningless title, and that's not going to. You know, he wants some control.
And I think that's what Patrick Waugh would probably say today that happened. Like I think based on what he said from his statement and based on what we're hearing, right, that he thinks that. Now Sakic, during his press conference yesterday, said, you know, no, we got along, we talked about everything, but at the same time, Sakic played both sides of it. He was being
right. But you remember, we talked about this a long time ago, and I said there's going to be a point where the friend Joe Sakic and the GM Joe Sakic is going to clash with Patrick Waugh. Like, you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, and I think
they can talk about everything. They can be talking about everything. That doesn't mean that Sakic isn't talking about another side of the story to somebody else. You can
talk to your
conversations.
Right, you can talk to your blue in the face, but in the end, if the decision goes against what you want, you're going to lose your mind because, again, you're the one who's got to work with what players, you know, he has, and if he's not given what he thinks he needs to win, then what's the point? Then I understand him resigning.
Right.
Right.
I think that's actually a really interesting point, Mike, because you see a lot of that in other, like in football, where coaches are also in charge of making player personnel decisions. It's interesting because you see a lot of trouble with certain teams in the NHL where you feel like you have this great coach, but your GM isn't getting the pieces together, and somehow the coach ends up getting blamed for it. Yep. And that's just an interesting dynamic for me in general.
I mean, checks and balances work, you know, they really do, but they require a lot of things in place for them to work. They require trust, a great deal amount of trust. Like if you're in an organization, you know, where you have checks and balances, you need a great deal of trust in the people you're working with. Because you know, I have it at Hockey Buzz. I've got a guy I work with here who's I've worked with for 25 years, you know, and he's been great, and I trust him. You know, and when he doesn't agree with me, and sometimes I get accused of being too artistic. By the way, I sometimes become that person as well, right? So I know that side of things too. I can fall back on this, you know. So it's interesting to me. The other factor of this that I think has to be taken into account is the Quebec franchise that's coming up, and the fact that maybe if that kind of artistic coaching would work anywhere, it would work in Quebec. And that's not to say anything. Just to say that we know that Montreal fans and Quebec fans in general, they do look at things very differently than the rest of the NHL, and they do, and that whole there's a cultural difference. It just is, and
Sure.
it's not, and I love it. I personally think it's an incredible. I love the fact that we have these two dichotomies, like I always say, like between Toronto and Montreal. I love this whole thing because you have two very different ways of looking at it from the fan base, two very different ways of managing it, and I think that I do think we'll have, like I said in my blog today, we can take a poll as to when people are going to be wanting Michel Therrien out and Patrick Roy in,
Yeah, but see that's where that's where I split. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying about Quebec, because I mean Michel Bergeron was sort of that kind of coach, sort of like
he'll do Quebec.
Yeah, and he sort of, his personality, his feistiness fit Quebec, and I think Roy is similar to that in some respects. I think Roy in Montreal would be as successful as Mario Tremblay. They couldn't wait to get that jerk out of Montreal because he just didn't work. The personality didn't work with the Habs. It just
I don't
didn't.
think Roy wants to go back to Montreal for anything.
No, I don't think he does either. I'm not saying he will, but I'm just saying that people are going to call for it. And the part of the calling for it is, and they already are. I mean, you can already search, if you search on Twitter, Roy Therrien, you'll find people wanting this already.
One thing, Roy was critical of the drafting, and look, drafting's tough. The one thing you could say, though, that is an interesting thing is, ever since the cap, Colorado has made the playoffs, once, twice? They're a non-factor. When they used to be able to spend as much money as they want and get all of the proven talent that they wanted, they won a Stanley Cup. They won multiple Stanley Cups. So, I mean, that's the difference right now with Colorado is in the cap world, they're not as successful.
Well, even more so, Russ, they have their own budget, and they'll say to the blue in the face that they don't. But you look at what's happened over the last few years, and how many podcasts and webcasts have we talked about Ryan O'Reilly? Have we talked about keeping the salaries in line with Matt Duchene? Yeah. It's constant. They have their own budget limitation, so it's not even close to what the cap is. So in the end, that affects the ability of a general manager to put together a winning franchise.
And it's interesting because this is a franchise. Well, the one thing I've heard many people talk about, I mentioned this before too, is people forget the disaster that was the Colorado Rockies, right? That was completely a big problem, and they
a lot of it because of Don Cherry.
A lot of it because of Don Cherry, but also just because in general they did have a tough time drawing if they didn't win. They had to win, and if they won, they could draw like crazy. But then they ended up moving to New Jersey, and winning in New Jersey, but then, of course, the Avalanche did the same thing with the Nordiques. The Nordiques weren't winning, and they moved to Avalanche, and they started winning. But they won right away in Colorado. And
they were the best. They were the best team in the league the year after, or the year before they moved. Remember, they were in first in the Eastern Conference, and they lost to the Rangers in the first round in 95.
Right.
94.
So
95, I think.
The people around the Nordiques organization have always been a little bit hesitant about the success that the Avalanche organization have always been hesitant about the success the Avalanche have had, because they did come in as a winner right away, and it's easy to fill the seats when you win.
Right.
But so this budget, that you see is kind of a result of that fear of, like, okay, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy is what's happened.
Yeah.
They've spent less money because they used to spend like crazy because they realized if they could get it, if they could win, they would put people in the seats, no problem. And there is a great fan base in Colorado, and not just in Colorado, but in Denver, in not just to the Avalanche, but with college hockey too, right? I mean, there's a really good thing going on in Colorado.
Well, that organization rode the wave of the talent that was stockpiled in Quebec. And they rode that for at least a decade. They had Sakic, they had Owen Nolan for a time, then they traded him. There was they had Forsberg from the Lindros trade, and then they get Patrick Roy from Montreal in that trade. And that team, the success of that team lasted most of the next decade. And the thing is, they're trying to perpetuate that and recapture that with a new group centered around Nathan McKinnon and Matt Duchene and Eric Johnson. But it's not the core group that they were brought in, and they've been struggling the last 4 or 5 years trying to reassemble a successful franchise. But again, you can't really do it when you're limited in terms of the amount of money that you're spending on players.
Right, and there are a lot of Colorado fans I talked to yesterday. They're very happy that Patrick Roy left. I mean, they loved the impact he had at the beginning, but now they sit back and they say, okay, man, the last year it was just a disaster, and he doesn't seem to know how to handle it, and he just his way of reacting to things, of overreacting to things, is what I've heard a lot. He overreacts to everything that happens, and therefore
They did raise their budget though. They're 5th in the league now in salary, so because of locking everybody up, that did cause them to go over their budget. They probably felt like long term it would be better for them, so they did lock themselves into this type of team.
Yeah, but it took them long enough, Russ. It took them 4 or 5 years to finally pony up the money. I heard.
No, but that's what Waz saw, right? He saw that once they were at this point, they are locked in now.
I heard an interesting analogy from a Buffalo-based reporter that compared Patrick Waugh to Rex Ryan.
Ooh.
I don't think that's fair.
Why?
Just I mean, Russ,
tell me what the comparison is, and then I'll.
Well, they're just sort of like the ebullient personality, sort of like the outward. I mean, he wasn't as much of a shall I say, a P.T. Barnum type showman that Rex Ryan is. At least that's the impression that we get in Buffalo. But there was that sort of outspokenness that Patrick Waugh had, and I can see some of it, but I don't think he's as out of control as Rex Ryan is at times.
He definitely didn't put the Avalanche front and center with things that he did all the time in the press. Maybe one time he blew up on the bench, twice in a couple of years, but that's it. So
but it was most recently, people remember how he reacted to Matt Duchene in the goal celebration, like that. It was just more like the things that are fresh in our memory are what we're recalling as his whole tenure. That's really what's happening.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fair comparison otherwise.
So I wanted to move on for a second, just before we get into number 10, which I think I wanted to do number 10 today. If you guys can, or should we do number 10 or should we do number 9 currently playing? Because I didn't do number 9 currently playing yesterday. So maybe we'll go with number 9 currently playing.
That's good.
I can send that list to everybody actually currently.
I got it up. Hold on.
I'll
send the link.
Send the link to
Send the link.
But I had to speak for Jillian in honor of us watching this soccer game out of the corner of our eyes. I know.
Sorry.
No, we have to. It is something.
It's a really great game.
It's been a very, very exciting game while we've been talking about Patrick Waugh's artistic style.
I've been able to balance them, I think.
I've talked about Patrick Waugh while watching this game, so it's been.
Who's playing, by the way? Who's playing?
This is USA and Sweden.
Yeah. Oh. And they're in 3 minutes of stoppage time.
Yeah, they're at the end of the game right now. All right, so. This is something that was sent to me from Reddit Hockey, and I really liked it, so I wanted to throw it. And I'm not going to get banned for putting this on, I don't think.
Let's not risk it.
No, it's not a risk. I definitely won't, because this is not. So someone on Reddit did soccer-style crests for NHL teams, Jillian. Check this out. This is really cool. All right, so I have it up here. So this is I think some of these are I don't know. I think some of these
like them. See, I like
cool.
them.
I mean, I think they're very cool. Like
some of them are. I mean, some of them
Okay, go back to the beginning here, because.
Okay.
Okay, the Sabres one, I think that's not a saber. That looks more like a machete.
Okay, I'll give you that.
The Red Wings one looks pretty cool. I like the Boston one.
The Senators one's a little it's a little. I think it could be better. The Senators.
Yeah, I like the Maple Leafs one a lot, actually. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually like the Maple Leafs one.
I don't like any of them, I'll be honest.
The Toronto one is weak because it doesn't even have the team's name on it. It says Toronto Hockey Club.
Okay, so going down
I
here.
like Columbus's. That one's really cool. And I really like Pittsburgh's. Oh, I see. I love Pittsburgh's.
Carolina's is awful. Like, Carolina's is just...
Carolina's looks like a toilet flushing.
Yeah.
I like the New York Hockey Club. That is that's really cool. I like it. Just
there you go, so.
Thought that one through, yeah.
The Devils and Flyers are just ridiculous.
No, I like them.
I like the Devils one.
I like the Devils one.
What does 1974 have to do with the? I mean, that's okay. That's when the franchise originated, but
right.
It's not when the franchise moved to New Jersey. So that's.
The Islanders are showing the Brooklyn Bridge.
I like DCHC.
How long is that going to last?
I like DCHC. I think that's.
I really like DCHC. See, I really like these. I do.
I do too. I thought you would. Here's some the Predators one.
Good job, Reddit. She's ready. Whoever did this, we need to give credit to them.
I know. I want to give him credit. I'm going to give him credit in a second.
Whoever did this should be banished.
I agree.
Lewis is.
I have a question though. What do you? I can tell you what I like about them, but what do you guys dislike about them?
The lack of, I guess, the person who made this has a lack of hockey knowledge. It's obvious.
Oh, I don't think so.
No. I think that's rude because that means they're applying it. They are taking hockey and making it soccer.
No, because we're pointing out you can't have 1972 in Carolina. You can't. This is a lack of hockey knowledge.
Oh, that's one thing.
Or is he applying soccer values to hockey?
Oh no, Jillian. See, the thing is that the thing that makes hockey emblems unique is the historical connection to them.
Oh my God, you couldn't sound more pretentious if you tried. I'm sorry, you couldn't. You couldn't. This is the problem.
At least let it be factual. None of these things are. Half of them are not even factual.
Excuse me, when you have emblems like this,
hold on, let me see.
You reference these emblems in the ones that
you don't. The idea of this is
the point is they're completely remaking them to fit the hockey mold. That's what they're doing.
Like the Islanders one is really cool. The Verrazano Bridge, I guess, or the Brooklyn Bridge. That's Brooklyn Bridge, right? Brooklyn Bridge. Sorry, yeah, Brooklyn Bridge, of course. So
okay, it is the Brooklyn Bridge, but like I said, how long is that going to last?
Yeah, but what happens when NHL franchises right now reimagine their emblems? You get the decapitated goat's head and the garden slug.
But you don't have any of that.
So the Ranger one, it looks like the New York Americans.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the city that you really associate with America is New York City, so...
Yeah, I like that. I think that's fine.
You wouldn't even know there's New York City even in that emblem.
Statue of Liberty, which is in New York City.
In the corner.
It's this big.
Statue of Liberty is very...
Jillian.
I think
you guys are being, like, you're not having an open mind, or you're not... I can see why people wouldn't want them to be the actual emblem. I'm not saying they should do that. I'm just saying I thought the person did a good job of taking a soccer concept.
No, he did a horrible job.
As a wise man once...
by Mo Lightning. I want to put credit on this for the Reddit. Okay, so this is what I have is this is by Mo Lightning Bro on Reddit. Reddit hockey.
Don't quit your day job.
No,
I think don't listen to Mike. We never listen to Mike.
They don't know it. This is the curmudgeon old Mike and Russ are just curmudgeon old people here.
These are clown logos, bro.
The purpose of an open mind is to close on something.
No. He did a good job.
I like that they're different. I don't think like that. I obviously don't think that a team is going to go and make these their logos. That's not what I'm saying. It's good to see a fun, unique take on it that is taking things that you soccer and applying it.
You know what? Jillian, don't say that, Jillian, because if you look at the Florida Panthers jerseys, it looks like one of those. Or the Florida Panthers emblem, it looks like one of those.
Yeah, but that's a different market. They're not going to make the Toronto Maple Leaf or the Montreal Canadiens logo, or even the Red Wings logo. They're not going to change those types of logos. But somebody in Florida, that works.
Thank God.
I think if Old Navy got the NHL contract, it would look good.
No, I just want to shut them up for a second, and I'm going to mute them both and say that the reality is that this guy did a great job. I really appreciate you letting us use this on the show, and I really think that I think when you're sitting there and you're trying to re-examine 30 different teams, he was very creative in how he did it.
Fresh
in how he did it, and this is the guy that I would hire to do a logo anytime, and I really thought it was good.
Maybe fresh like a Swanson's TV dinner.
All right, let's go to number 9.
Salisbury steak. There you go.
Okay, so by the way, today I wrote earlier about number 9. We did number 9 all time yesterday, which is I thought the hardest one to do.
Number 9.
Hardest one to do ever, because in my opinion, you have two of the top 3 or 4 best players in Maurice Richard and Gordie Howe at number 9 of all time, right? So this is really tough. You guys obviously didn't agree with me because the voting was overwhelmingly for Gordie. I get it. I mean, I'm completely. How can you not vote for Gordie Howe right now, especially? But
he's gonna win.
He was gonna win. Maurice Richard did get a respectable 25%. Bobby Hull 5%, and I'm sorry, Andy Bathgate the 1.05%. So yes,
at least Andy got on the board.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I completely got it. I don't know. To me, that's the deal. So we are not. By the way, people who are saying that that we're too easily pleased in the chat room there, I'm sorry, it's not the case. Jillian and I are not easily pleased at all. And
see, the people are on our side, Ek. The people are on Russ and I's side.
The point is that you can disagree. It's okay. I mean, we never said they were perfect.
This is like Fiddler on the Roof. We're in favor of tradition.
I mean, listen, you guys they have no hockey knowledge, and you guys were just being a little.
Look at some of those dates, Jillian. They don't jive.
Maybe they do in some ways. All right.
Yeah, it's close enough. I mean, all right. So let's go to number.
Wait, you're focusing on the wrong thing. The date isn't the exact thing you should be focusing on. It's the entire logo, what the logo looks like.
But when it's staring me in the face and it's wrong, I can't.
Because you can't see past one imperfection. Jeez.
Jeez. Oh boy.
Not to mention it looked like a flushing toilet like that.
Well, the Patreon podcast that comes up after this is going to be fun. And it's going to start at 2 o'clock. The link will be posted. The way this works, unfortunately, with Google Hangouts is I can't really post a link until this show is over. So what I will do is once we're done this link, a new link will be created for that show, which will be posted onto patreon.com/hockey. And if you're a member of if you've donated more than $5 a month, we really appreciate it. You'll be able to see the link in there. Otherwise, shame on you. You're stealing the podcast. I'm just kidding. It's fine. Thank you very much for watching it. And I don't know why we're having problems with Finland. It could be something I had yesterday, so I apologize to those in the chat room who were asking why they can't watch the podcast on Finland.
Is it still not working in Finland?
Yeah, for some reason we're being.
Sorry, Finland.
Yeah, I know. We'll figure it out. Something happened. All right. Anyway, so let us begin with number 9s, and I will let Jillian go first today because I think that's the right thing to do.
What? I'm sorry. Sorry. What?
The current number 9s.
Current number 9s. I get to go first.
15 of them in the NHL right now. So half the teams have a number 9, half the teams don't, which is surprising because that's a big nut.
I'm surprised there's not more number 9s actually.
That's a number that I would always retired. Some are retired, but not many. Like 3 or 4, but still, there's still like 10 teams that don't have number 9s, including the Flyers, by the way.
Yeah, no, they don't. This is. Sorry, I'm looking. I'm determining my top number 9 right now. Sorry, guys, I'm stealing all your time.
You're fine. You take your time.
Pressure is on.
Yeah, the pressure is on. As it is right now in South America, where 2 women's teams are kicking the ball back and forth to each other.
And they're in extra time.
Right.
Uh-oh. Okay, sorry. I'm just gonna go with Matt Duchene because we were just talking about him. That's my reason. That's actually my reason right now because I don't want to make any other decisions about that because I haven't really had the time to think very much about it. And he did score 30 goals this season. So
no, Matt Duchene.
He's a heck of a player. No, that's a great.
He's not. I mean, he's not. I'm not saying he's bad, but all I could ever keep seeing was Evander Kane on that list, and I just kept thinking about other things. And I was like, I got to focus on good things. So
we're not gonna pick. No one's gonna pick Evander Kane today. I don't think. All right, so between Mike and Russ, I think this is Russ's turn to go first.
Boy.
I know the pressure's on. I couldn't think under pressure, guys. I'm sorry.
I'll tell you why the pressure's on. I'm going to give a pick that I really didn't think I would ever pick, and I'm going to have to go Jeff Carter. If you go the original number 9, I know he wears 77 now.
No. He doesn't wear number 9.
He did
what is it, Tim Horton again? Jeez.
No, we're talking about players who wear number 9 currently in the NHL. This is the players who are wearing.
I don't know why he came up on a list. I don't know why. Because I thought about it. I thought he might be like 77 or something. All right, hold on.
When was Jeff Carter number 9 in the NHL?
Yeah, I didn't think he was number 9.
No, I know. I didn't think so either, but he came up on a list. Hold on.
No, you need a better.
He was 17 and then 77.
77 is what I thought he was, but then he came up on a list, so I didn't know.
Russ, here's the
Tyler
real
Johnson.
List. So, there you go. This is the real list. This is the one.
Boom. Wait, Russ made his pick.
Tyler Johnson. Okay, Tyler Johnson it is from Tampa. Very controversial last year. Had a kind of a rough beginning after a great season, but came on strong in the playoffs and still should have been more of a factor for Team USA in my opinion, but wasn't. Anyway, that's and Matt Duchene, by the way, last year had a horrible beginning of the year, but then everybody said he was going to get traded, and I think I also heard a lot of that came from Patrick Waugh today. So it's interesting too. So we'll see what it is on there. But Mike, go ahead. You have the next pick.
Well, I'll save the Nashville Predator guy for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll take, even though he's probably a little bit on the starting on the downslope of the career, I think he might still be one of the better ones, and that's Mikko Koivu of the Minnesota Wild.
Now that's a great pick, and
very good two-way center.
Yeah, very underrated. Very underrated. I think his whole career has been underrated. I just think that this is a guy who really, was he Saku Koivu? No, but in some ways he was better. In some ways he wasn't. Obviously.
I wasn't going to take the number 9 in Buffalo because he said he was going to score 50 goals last year, and he scored 30 less. So that's missing by a little bit.
That's a lot of goals to say. That's like a pretty lofty goal. Like, I'm going to score 50 goals. You do realize that's a lot of goals, right? That's nothing.
I could
30
think
goals is a lot.
I could think of
just to throw out 50 is that's a big number.
I could think of
his complete level of delusion. Sorry.
I could think of some goals that were much more attainable for that particular player, but we won't go into that today because I'm being nice.
So as usual, I have to start with who I'm not going to pick. I'm not going to pick Gregory Campbell from the Blue Jackets or Andrew Kopp from Winnipeg. I will stay away from Pascal Dupuis, even though I really love Pascal Dupuis, but he's pretty much retired, or completely retired. Evander Kane, like we discussed, is not a non-starter. Milan Mikhailuk, who I really like, is I think really underrated, and I've always been a mock.
When he's healthy, which is never.
When he's healthy, which is never. He is very good. Dmitry Orlov had a really good year last year. He's at times, and then in the playoffs, really kind of fell apart. I thought he was a problem in the playoffs.
Victor Tikhonov is the best number 9 in the KHL.
Yeah, right. Steve Ott, always controversial. Steve Ott, who was at one point, I think it was a big pickup when St. Louis first got him, and now there's people, he barely played any games last year. Yeah. He was hurt a lot. He's healthy now apparently, and going into this year, he's really excited. So maybe we'll see a better year out of Steve Ott. Brandon Proust, I'm going to best pass that one. Victor Tikhonov, who, of course, the son of the great Tikhonov, is the Arizona Coyotes number 9.
Grandson.
Yep, grandson, right. Sorry. Yuri Tlusty, who's got his own problems, is on the Devils, and he's number 9.
He loves Facebook.
Right. Dinas Zubers, who used to be number 9 on the Devils, is now number 9 on the Sharks. But my pick, of course, is going to be Philip Forsberg, of who the Predators were nice enough to steal at one point for the Washington Capitals.
Dinas Zubers is so old, he was number 9 on the Colorado Rockies.
Right. Yes, Philip Forsberg, who
there should be a write-in too. There is a good guy for a write-in.
Who would the write-in be?
Jaden Schwartz.
Oh yeah, right. Isn't he? Why isn't he on this list?
He is on another list. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you look at these lists.
No, but Steve, what the heck? Steve Ott was number 9 last year. No, Jaden Schwartz was number 9, wasn't he?
I thought, but he was on a list that I just looked up, but I don't know.
Mike, you look it up while I talk about Forsberg for a second.
Okay.
Schwartz was number 9 the year before. I'm pretty sure.
But continue. I'll look it up as we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Jaden Schwartz is a good pick, is a good call if it's the case. You might want to go with him instead of Koivu.
Yeah.
All right, so Philip Forsberg, just to me, I was very disappointed with his playoff performance last year, and I think that as much as I like Forsberg, and he has his moments where he is absolutely stunning, he can also disappear for great periods of time. So
he's young. He is still young.
He's young. But he is an absolute stud when he's playing at his best. He's just a knockout player, and I think if he had just played at all last year in the playoffs, the Predators may have been playing in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Jaden Schwartz is now wearing 17.
Okay, so that's why. There you go. Sorry, I know there were probably 1,000 people out there screaming at us for that, but sorry about that. I do remember Jaden Schwartz is number 9, which he was before. All right, so have a great weekend, everyone. Remember, if you are a Patreon subscriber, go to patreon.com in about 30 seconds, and I'll have a link for you there to the next show that's going to start right after this one, where we will talk about other things besides this and all, and take your questions. But meanwhile, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you soon.